We've decided to put together, as I said earlier, a short sort of Q&A session with our local conveyancer from Hewlett Legal, just to talk through these upcoming changes, which is called the seller disclosure regime. Now, Leisa, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? We might start with that.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Background for me, started as a young 19-year-old working for a big development company, progressed from there into law firms and starting my career as a conveyancer. Had dabbled in different areas of law throughout that time, but have come back into conveyancing throughout that. Sort of love property and love helping people.
Yeah, excellent. Now, you may have heard this term, seller disclosure regime, over the past 18 months or so, and it does involve a couple of changes that are going to be really important when the Act comes into play. But there hasn't been a lot of information that's been sort of forthcoming from government, education through the industry, with agents, solicitors, and more concerningly, consumers. Like a lot of clients I speak to every day have no idea what this change is on the 1st of August, how serious it is, and how it actually impacts the process of selling a property. So we might start there, Leisa. What is the seller disclosure regime?
Seller disclosure regime is a regime that's just been brought in under the Property Law Act. What it essentially means is before a buyer can sign a contract for the sale of your own property, you must give them a disclosure, and you must, with that disclosure, provide them with prescribed certificates of what they say, and they could be your searches or copies of rates notices or any other information you have about your property before that purchaser can sign the contract.
So it has to be provided before they actually sign the contract, not before you present an offer or present a contract to the buyer, it's when they're signing.
Beforehand, but even at an auction, you will need to make sure that you have your disclosure documents at an auction, or if you know the registered people are turning up, try and provide that to them beforehand.
We might get into some more detail on what exactly is required to be disclosed through this document, but when do the changes actually take effect?
1st of August, no sooner.
No sooner, so literally a couple of weeks away. So if you were planning a sale over the next little while, at what point in time would you recommend having this disclosure statement prepared if you were planning to go to market in the next couple of months?
If it was me, I would start planning things now. Give yourself some time to gather your documents together. We can help as a conveyancer to organise your title searches, your survey plans. If you've got a unit that you're selling, you'll need to order the searches through your body corporate. We can help with that as well. Otherwise, we can't complete the forms until the 1st of August. That doesn't take that much effort, but I would be having everything else lined up beforehand.
And what exactly are the forms?
The forms are called a Form 2. You may have a copy, or most of you have a copy there. Self-explanatory, obviously asks for your name. It asks for the property address, lot and plan numbers, but then it goes into detail of matters that affect your property. So are there any registered easements? Are there any unregistered encumbrances? Are there any leases that aren't registered on the property? Is the property tenanted at the moment? So what was your last rent increase? And then it will want details of what the rates is. How much is the water? In what rating period are you in? And things like that. So every property will differ somewhat, but they're the main things, including a pool certificate. Make sure if you've got a pool that you've got an updated pool certificate.
Now, what I find interesting about that is the contract currently discloses a lot of those things. So what was the requirement from state government? Why the need for the change? Because as I understand it, it's following suit with a lot of other states in Australia. Traditionally, Queensland's been very buyer beware. And what I mean by that is when you're negotiating on a property, you negotiate price and terms, you sign a contract goes to the solicitor, then the solicitor starts the searches. Whereas now it's almost flipping this around, the requirement now on the seller to provide some of those searches up front.
Yes, as for the reason why. I don't know why they've brought it in now. New South Wales have been doing it for a very long time. Yes, it puts the onus on the seller more than the purchaser now. So the effect of that is meaning that if you do not include something, even if you're unsure whether you should include it because it can give a buyer a right to terminate a contract. So you're best just putting everything in there that you possibly can.
Yeah. And I mean, the actual detail on what's required to be disclosed, we've got examples of those forms that are currently in front of you. And obviously your real estate agent will recommend that you have these documents filled out by either a search agent. So when you're selling a unit, you need to prepare a body corporate disclosure statement. And so you can pay a search agent to look through those records and prepare that document, which you will then sign before the agent provides it to the buyer. But what we would recommend is that you actually engage a conveyancer or a solicitor, not when you sign a contract, but before you start the sale process, because they can actually take the obligation sort of away from you a little bit to prepare these documents, and they will then obviously handle the conveyancing for you once you have transacted. Just coming back to prescribed certificates, prescribed certificates, what are they? What do they mean?
Searches, essentially. It's just a different word for it. As a buyer, right now, we order the searches for a buyer where there's little onus on a seller to present documents to a buyer. As you said, it's flipped now. Mm-hmm. So we need to get everything together to make sure that we're able to produce that to a buyer before they sign the contract.
And so a lot of people that have bought and sold real estate before will understand the term searches. So searches are things such as a rates notice. It could be a asbestos report if there's known asbestos in the property.
Land tax,
yep.
Water notices, your body corporate notices. Take note that the body corporate search that we currently do is changing also on the 1st of August. Similar format, more detailed, but to get that, we have to order that through the body corporate. So a time frame will depend on the body corporate. Some of your bigger body corporates are quite quick in the turnaround, others aren't so much. So it might mean that we don't know when the body corporate's going to be able to roll out these forms and what their turnaround is. So whether we can, in July, order these searches and have that particular body corporate search ready for you on the 1st of August, we just don't know yet. Hopefully in the next fortnight, we will have further information. There's a new contract coming out. We still haven't seen what that looks like yet. So as the weeks go on, I think in the next few weeks, we'll know more.
More information will start coming out. Because currently there are actually two separate contracts when it comes to residential sales. There's a contract for residential land and houses, and then there's a contract for properties that are within a community management scheme or CTS. So they're looking to blend those two contracts into the one, which at least makes the agent's job a little bit easier. The impact, I guess, on timing with these disclosure statements, there's probably two parts to this. Firstly, the timing which you need to take into account to have these searches prepared and done. So we'd be suggesting 1 to 2 weeks, would you suggest?
Body corporate, definitely. Things like title searches, survey plans, they're usually back within the hour, if that. Rate searches, if we have to order a rate search, council can take 10 working days to produce a rate search. Depending on the detail, we can do an online rates with Brisbane City Council. Again, it depends on the council as well. If you're outside, if you're in Moreton, Ipswich, whatever it may be, that changes the things again. So land tax searches, you'll have that within a day. It really depends on what you're ordering and the timeframes.
Yeah, because I guess most people will plan a sale, a few months out, sometimes a few years out. And so an extra week or two to be conscious of performing these searches before you then go and list the property for sale, it probably more impacts investors or people that consider selling off market. It's no longer going to be a quick, easy, we'll talk to a buyer and introduce them to the property. There's going to be a bit of a waiting period as we prepare the searches and the disclosure statement to actually get an offer signed or get a contract presented.
You can order what they call a fast track search. And again, not every council will do this, but Brisbane City Council do a fast track search. So your standard search at the moment is about $290, $300. To fast track it from 10 days down to 3 to 5 business days, probably tack on another $100 on top of that. So it's an outlay for you. It's expensive. But if you've got buyers lining up at the door, it might be worth it as well. It's just something to consider and something we can go through with you at that time.
do some of these searches, will the seller be able to provide them without actually having to go and do formal searches? Like a rates notice you'll obviously have. You may have access or be well versed in Brisbane City Council. You can actually order searches on your own. Will that be an issue for sellers, or you still recommend going through a search agent or a solicitor?
Depending on the search, they do ask whether you've got any notices served on your property. So, for example, if you've got a structure on your property, a carport that hasn't been council approved and council are aware and they've served you a notice, that is searchable with council. You can do a search to double check that there isn't any outstanding notices. Sometimes this comes up when people own a property and go to sell and they didn't even know that there was something not approved on the property. So to double check that, you can do those searches. Again, it takes 5 business days. As an owner, you may be able to call council and they may give you information over the phone. But things like rates, you can do an online rates search. They'll want zoning. There's mapping on council website. You can find your zoning on council website quite easily. So there are things that you can do that you don't have to order that search.
Okay, that's good to know. Talking about approvals and final certificates and things like that, building plans, approved plans. I mean, I've been selling 16 years through the Western Corridor, and there are a lot of homes that were built before 1980 that council just don't have a record of approved plans or final certificates. And in the past, as I said earlier, a buyer will only become aware of that if their solicitor post-contract inception does the search and shows that Brisbane City Council don't have a record. And then they'll come back to us and we'll ask the owner, and the owner will say, well, we never got given any final certificate or, approved building plans when we purchased. And depending on the purchaser's appetite for risk, sometimes we have to organise a retrospective certification of the property, which can be a very lengthy process. So what's the requirement based on the form that we've got currently for the seller to disclose approved plans and certifications? Do they have to do that, or is it only notices that council may have given?
Only notices.
Okay.
So if you've been given a notice before a buyer signs the contract, you need to disclose that.
And so that's where council is aware that there is a structure that's been built without approval. They've given notice that there is no approval, so the seller has to disclose that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because 12 months ago there was talk around building approvals and certifications being part of this disclosure statement, but from what it looks like now, that's not required. It's only a notice if council's aware of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of the delivery of this disclosure statement, obviously you said it must be on display for auctions, that we must be able to prove that a buyer has signed it before they sign an actual contract of sale. And that's pretty easy these days with DocuSign and digital signatures. However, can they be signed digitally, the disclosure statements?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You can send them by email. You can send them a link to make sure that they've got all those certificates within that email, or load them up onto DocuSign and make sure they sign it. There's no requirement for a buyer to sign it, but I would highly recommend that you have them sign it.
What if a buyer doesn't want to sign it?
It's a risk. It's a big risk that they may come back and say that they've never received the disclosure, which gives them termination rights. So I would be.
So the buyer has to sign it, even if we can prove that we've sent it to them. Like if we have a digital record, it must be signed.
Doesn't have to be signed.
Okay.
I would recommend that you get them to sign it just for your own records that you've delivered the disclosure to them.
Okay. Interesting.
Just in case.
And so what are the implications on two fronts? First front, incorrect information. What are the implications on both, say, the agent and the seller?
The agent, that's a question for you. The implications on the seller is the buyer can terminate. Right up to settlement, it gives them right to terminate the contract, get their deposit back, potentially even sue for damages and loss. So we really need to make sure that we have it right from the start, because you don't want to, once you've signed a contract, you don't want to let go of a sale. So it's really, it sounds scary, but when you look at the documents, what's required, I shouldn't say it's rare, kind of rare, that things come up on a property that are outrageous. it's not as scary as what it sounds. It's just change and a matter of getting used to a new process, I guess.
Yeah.
And being more prepared as a seller when you go to market the property to make sure you've got everything you require.
I mean, when you talk about the change itself, like there have actually been quite a lot of changes over the past 10, 15 years that now just become normal, right? Smoke alarm compliance, pool safety certificates. I mean, there was a sustainability declaration for a short period of time. Does anyone remember the sustainability declaration? What a form, hey? Surprised that one lasted so long. So it's a change that's obviously coming that we need to be made aware of. There are implications if they're not filled out correctly. As a professional, I would highly discourage an agent to sign on behalf of an owner. We would be encouraging each individual client to sign based on the information they've been provided by their solicitor or their search agent if they choose to do the searches that way. But it's just about being prepared for it. This will become normal. You've seen the industry, especially over the past 5 or 6 years, become a lot more transparent, which is a much better way to do business. Well, it should be more transparent anyway. You know, more building and pest reports done up front and provided to buyers, even if a buyer wants to get their own one done. There's new reports that are prepared that we use, which are called Develo reports, that pull all the Brisbane City Council overlays into one document that we have available and send to prospective purchasers. So the industry sort of changed in that regard, hasn't it?
Technology. It's amazing. It's made our life easier because everything's digital. So we can get those searches really quickly now. You know, years ago we used to write on an application form and fax it through or whatnot, where everything's just click of a button and ordering searches and what we need straight away. So, yeah, it's great.
And so also just to clarify, like this seller disclosure statement, it's different to a building and pest report. It's different to a body corporate disclosure statement. This has to be on every residential sale. Building and pest report is at the seller's discretion as to whether they want to get one done and provide it to the purchasers. And a body corporate disclosure statement is a requirement when selling a property that's in a community title scheme or building unit plan.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's good to know. So 3 great disclosure documents.
Building and pest, if you want to call it, yeah.
One thing that I want to ask also, I've got written down here, is just around timing again. So we spoke about timing on getting this document prepared and the searches back. But what if I've got a property that takes a bit longer to sell? And we prepare this document over the next few weeks, we launch to market, we may enter into a contract, that contract may terminate for whatever reason, and we end up 2 or 3 months down the line. How up to date do we have to keep this document?
The only thing I would think of is say if you're on the edge of a rating period, which we are now, so we all go into a new rating period in July. So say if this came in earlier, we've written on the disclosure statement, the rates amounts, and that's going to change in the new financial year. That's when you go and have to update it. If you've got no new notices on your property, there's no need to update it. If there's no risk of any change, I can't see you need to change it apart from that rates and water component where the financials are going to change.
Yeah, and I guess my concern around that was the lack of information we had up until about now with what had to be disclosed, because, you know, some of the things that they were originally talking about, I mean, that could change from quarter to quarter. And it's like, well, and we'll get to the cost on this in a moment, but does that mean I have to go and outlay that same amount of money every 3 months or so if I decide to pull the property off and go again at some stage and sort of pivot strategy? So, yeah, it's good to know that the form's sort of been simplified with less searches required, which hopefully doesn't require the constant need to update it.
And the form is a tick box. It's yes, no, yes, no. So if you tick yes because there's something on the property, that's when you've got to enclose that prescribed certificate, whatever it may be. If majority is no, nothing's going to change but those rates and water information in new rating periods.
Yeah, okay, excellent. All right, well, that's good to know. What about body corporate disclosure statements? So is there going to be a change to the way that these are put together? Or under the new Act?
We haven't heard.
Okay.
So this new disclosure statement, if you're selling a unit, you've got to provide the body corporate certificate. Now, the body corporate certificate at the moment is a search we do for purchasers. It's called a Form 13. It's changing to now where a seller has to provide it, and I think it's changing to a Form 33 for whatever reason, and it's in more detail. It encompasses the same type of information, but it goes into more detail. Whether we need to do a disclosure in addition to that, I don't know, because all the information is there, including your insurance. So, yeah, I've even tried to Google it. I can't find anything.
I mean, it's interesting. We've got a legal representative in the room that still doesn't have the information. So it's literally coming through real time. And we'll endeavour to share that with you as soon as we become aware of it. I mean, I think in RealWorks, which is a software that we use to prepare contracts, they haven't even updated to the new contract, which comes into effect
in a month.
In a month's time.
Yep.
So, yeah, it'll be just interesting to see how quickly these things roll out, especially with campaigns or properties that may be preparing for market right now. So, like, we've got a few campaigns that are coming to market in the next 2 weeks. And so if you sell in the following 2 weeks before the 1st of August, you don't need the seller disclosure statement. But if it goes past the 1st of August, and if we aren't ready with the searches, it's sort of going to put things on pause for a week or two until the statement's prepared.
Correct. And even if you have a contract on the 31st of July, you need that buyer to sign on the 31st of July. Otherwise, you are preparing a new contract and disclosures the 1st of August.
So when you say...
it's not just the disclosure, it's the contract that will change on the 1st of August as well.
So if you've got an offer that's out with a buyer, so that has to be retracted and then it has to be put on a new contract?
From the 1st of August.
1st of August,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so if that's out there, 31st of July, yeah, try and get that finalised before the 1st of August.
Okay. And the form hasn't been released, so you can't in advance, say on the 31st of July, you can't fill out on the new contract coming. It's got to be on the old one and then change it back.
We have not been given any notice of when the new contract's going to be released.
Okay.
So, no, we don't know yet. I wowould hope in the next fortnight we will know more. But there's no notice. There's no notice on REIQ or RealWorks. I had a look at that today as well. So it's coming.
It's coming. What about anticipated costs? What are we expecting, for owners to be charged? Obviously it depends on council, it depends on what searches have to be completed, but rough figure, do you reckon?
It does depend on council. It depends on the property and what's required. If you've got a pool, you're obviously going to have to get a safety certificate. A unit, that's going to cost you a little bit more. They're a couple of $100. Title searches are about $50. Same with survey plans, about $50. I would probably factor in a good couple of $100, and then if we're preparing it, there's our professional fee too, which we really haven't got to that point yet because we haven't seen what's totally involved. But it would be in addition to our conveyancing fee.
Yeah. And I made that point earlier, like I would see in your industry probably more of an option or a solution for a one-stop solution where it's like, okay, rather than engage a conveyancer once a contract's been signed, engage a conveyancer maybe while you're prepping the house for sale, get them to prepare the disclosure statement. Prepping the house could take you a couple of weeks, could take you a couple of months. Obviously, you'd hold off until you're closer to get going for the disclosure statement, but that's how I would anticipate a recommendation from my point of view.
And contact us and we can take you through it. We can ask the questions that we need to ask and get you through it and work out what we need to gather within that disclosure document for you. And then present it to your buyers, and then once you've got a purchaser and signed contract, we're ready to go.
Yeah, great. I think we might use this opportunity because I said earlier this is an informal sort of presentation, so I'd love questions. Hopefully we're able to answer them. If you have them, to the floor. If you've got any questions, it's a great opportunity to engage with either myself or Leisa.
Did you just say that the minutes have to be available to the buyer?
The body corporate minutes, not necessarily the minutes. The buyer can do a search of the whole body corporate records and get that. What they are wanting is a body corporate certificate. The certificate generally will outline the levies, so your admin, your sinking funds, if there's an insurance levy, it'll provide a copy of the insurance certificate and any special levies and the like. But generally not minutes, they won't go into that depth.
So the body corporate can't prevent you from researching and getting a hold of the minutes? Because you might.
As an owner, I wouldn't expect so. No, because we can get the minutes ourselves through a search, so they're searchable things.
Charmaine, were you referencing a seller or a buyer being prevented from looking at the body corporate minutes? A buyer.
I'm thinking about potential legal action going on and trying to hide it from all.
We do these searches now. Yeah, we do these searches now for buyers for the body corporate records. They're about that thick because it goes through all of the minutes. So as a buyer, yeah, absolutely, you can order those searches. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, currently we use a search agent, which is a third party for body corporate disclosure statements. In the future, we're probably leaning more towards a solicitor handling the entire seller disclosure statement and the body corporate disclosure statement. But the body corporate disclosure statement can actually be quite small. It's only really 3 pages disclosing the key outgoings and sinking fund, insurance policy details, things like that. But we always pay extra to get supporting documents, and that can be another 200 pages sometimes that we can provide for full disclosure to the buyers. Couple of years of meeting minutes, like there's a lot of detail.
It's often quite expensive as well, those searches. Like they're about $500 to get that full body corporate record just for one search.
Did you say special levies would come with the
Yeah, it will have everything in there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, special levies are contained in even just a short version of the body corporate disclosure statement. Normally it will state an interim levy, and then you'll have to go looking through the supporting documents to see what the levy is actually for. Yeah. On that note, I haven't prepped you for this question, but body corporate disclosure statements obviously currently, they need to be provided, right? What's the difference between a body corporate disclosure statement and an implied warranty statement?
Huey, do you want to answer this?
Huey? Robin?
One is implied warranties are contained within the contract under the Body Corporate Community Management Act, and the disclosure, the current Section 206 disclosure statement has got to be given as a separate statement, but the other goes within the contract.
Correct.
So we don't know what's happening with warranties till we see the new format of the contract. So, but looking at what's coming out at the moment, I think what's being required in the warranties will go into the new disclosure. So they're going to try and scoop it all up into
the one. There you go.
Yeah, because on that note, I guess it's implied warranties attached to the contract, body corporate disclosure statement before the contract.
Yeah. One's actually within the contract. It can't even be separate from the contract. It's got to be in the contract or annexed to it.
Yeah.
The current BCCM Section 206 has to be given as a prescribed separate document.
And that's why when Robin McElwain is printing signed contracts at the office, they're usually 300 pages long. A lot of detail in it. Any other questions from the floor?
Just in relation to, you mentioned before in relation to searches, you mentioned about asbestos. Clearly, obviously, the disclosure there is the seller does not warrant whether asbestos is present. So clearly, it's the onus of the buyer to perhaps do a building inspection report to determine.
Correct. And even then, some building inspectors now won't go near it. They'll recommend that you get a specialised asbestos person to come in.
Yeah. So there's no obligation, even if you are aware of there's asbestos there.
Not on that form 2, no.
Yeah, I mean, that's another difference to what the form looks like now compared to what they were talking about 6-12 months ago. I mean, it's interesting, a lot of property we sell, you know, a building and pest inspector in their report will state that there looks to be asbestos or evidence of asbestos, whether it's fibre, cement sheeting or just the age of the dwelling. But the truth of the matter is, you don't know for sure unless it's tested. So there has to be an invasive test. They've got to take a sample of the wall to actually be tested to come back and confirm accurately that, yes, it has asbestos or not. What about buildings on the asbestos register? Obviously, there's a record there.
There would be a record there, but on the Form 2, it doesn't say whether you need to disclose it. But in saying that, if you've got any notices and it comes under that, you need to disclose it. So it could come under that. Yeah. If in doubt, disclose it. Okay. If you know something, just disclose it.
Interesting.
Just in relation to this, this relates to Queensland legislation. Is that consistent with other states, for example, New South Wales?
No, we're all different. Every state is different. I don't know why. There's similarities for sure, but every state's different with the legislation.
I wonder why federal government doesn't just scoop it all up and take control. Like, rather than it being different, I mean, even agents have to go through different training, CPD points, and then that's a good thing because CPD's been introduced to Queensland, which means an agent doesn't have just standard licensing initially. They then must keep up to date with changes to legislation and things like this, which Queensland previously hadn't had. Any thoughts on that? Why federal doesn't step in?
No idea, but it would make our life easier. Yeah, because we do New South Wales conveyancing as well, and yes, there's similarities. The contracts look completely different. Their terminology sometimes is completely different. It would be nice. It's just not the way. It's never been the way.
Fair enough. We've got a few agents in the room. Obviously, you guys from the White Toowong team are all up to date with this. Any questions from you? Why got the solicitor in the room? No, excellent. Well, if there are no other questions, that was the information we wanted to share with you tonight. I hope it's been informative. We've only been able to share what information we have on hand, but this is coming through sort of real time. You know, Leisa and I only spoke a couple of days ago and we were still concerned that there wasn't clarification on a few things. When you arrived, dear James would have passed you over a little booklet, information booklet. So it's a frequently asked questions, which we've run through a lot of tonight. I hope, as I said, tonight's been informative. While we're here also, I'd take the opportunity to invite you to our Wes and White Toowong Supporters Day on the 2nd of August. We're playing Norths, so if you're free, come down, check it out. We'll watch Wes take on Norths. But
Are you playing?
no, I'm not playing. Definitely not, but I'll be supporting. Guys, thank you so much again. I said tonight would be short and sharp. Go enjoy the rest of your evenings. On your way out, if you wanted to have a chat to one of the team at White Toowong, feel free. But Leisa, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Nice to meet everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much.